Have you ever felt like, hey, I'm a responsible adult, but why does money still feel like a foggy, stressful part of my life or hard to talk about altogether? We'll unpack the idea that money is a tool, but most of us were never really taught how to use it, and that gap shows up as fear, stress, and strain. Welcome to the Building Thinkers podcast. I'm Tracy Clark, and my guest today is passionate about teaching personal finance in a way that feels human, doable, and relieving. We'll talk about some of our own money stories, what gets in the way, and about simple systems, automation, and the mindset shift from I'm bad with money to a sense of empowerment and financial freedom. So I'm so excited today to be joined by
Priya Malani.
Priya, one of the things that we start with, so it's the Building Thinkers podcast, and I like to ask the question, what is it that you build?
Well, the thing that's interesting is I'm building a financial services institution for the modern professional, but I'm also building so many other things because when you build a company, when you're an entrepreneur, I got into it to build a company that could serve next gen wealth. But then I realized, oh my gosh, I have to build marketing and I have to build advisory education because a lot of the financial advisors out there are not taught how to talk to young people. So it was actually interesting to hear a little bit about your background because I'm like, oh, I could use Tracy's help. I need to build a learning, like a program for the financial advisors who are very talented. Almost everyone I hire is a CFP, which is a certified financial planner, but they're not taught in the CFP program. They're not taught how to serve. So I'm building so many things. I don't even know where to begin.
So can you tell us a little bit about like what brought you into this? Like why money?
I saw myself pursuing performing arts until I realized the paycheck and the longevity of the career. And I was like, oh, wait. I need to rethink this. I also knew, I wasn't going to get into the company of my choice and all of that. And it led me to rethink, and money just seemed very practical. And I wanted to make money. I like nice things. I'm not shy about it. And so I went into money. I was an economics major, and I joined Merrill Lynch right out of college.
In this season in particular, we're talking about human flourishing and all the different ways that humans flourish. And of course, money, you mentioned, like, is a tool. And so it's something we do need to flourish. And yet sometimes that equation gets out of whack, either over pursuit or fear that's connected. I'd love to get into that. And maybe one of the avenues that we could think about is when you're working with folks, when you're doing education work, when you're doing planning work, what is it that you feel like keeps people stuck? What do you see consistently, like across the maybe themes that come up for you?
Well, I think you nailed it. People have narratives, they have stories, and the stories are endless, which is actually why I like looking at money as a tool, because then you can just learn how to use the tool rather than think about it in context of your story, which could put you into a scarcity mindset or a wealth is bad or I'll never have enough, or like there's just so many different narratives, and they all come up. And when we're dealing with couples, you have two money stories coming to the table. And not just two, but like so many different variations, because you can think about money from so many different angles, like saving it, earning it, spending it. There's so many different concepts around money. So I would say all of the things come up, and we do take what we do very seriously at Stashwell, to the point that the numbers with couples and individuals we try to like not harp on that. We really harp on the mindset shifting, and we want to work on the psychology, and we want to unwind a lot of the money stories that prevent you from using the tool.
Yeah, I want to dig into that more. So, okay, let's say you're sitting down with folks and you're trying to unwind the story. Can you tell us a little bit about where you like to start without giving away any of your secret sauce?
No, I'm happy to give everything away. So the thing is, I'm a very pragmatic human. I like to come at things from a very rational perspective. And most people are just, they understand if you bring a rational argument, it's hard to it's hard to go up against that. So I like to approach things from a very rational perspective. Like, why do you feel that way? And, is a limiting belief getting in the way of you being able to use your money? And so it's more just a conversation, respecting people where they are, meeting them where they are, but also challenging them to say, like, how do you think that came about? And what would it look like if? So it's really just a conversation. That's the hardest part. A really good financial advisor, that's the part that you're paying for. I think you're not paying for them to like give you asset allocation. You can get asset allocation on GPT. You're paying for someone to hold you accountable, to challenge you, to really force you to face why you're standing in your own way. Because that is it for most people, or they're standing in their own way. We see people in all spectrums of income. And I'm telling you, it's not about income. It's how you're using the tool. You could be making $60,000 or $600,000. If you have the wrong mindset around your money, or the wrong mindset, but just a limiting mindset, it doesn't matter how much you make.
I went to a really intense college preparatory school from kindergarten through 12th grade. And it always felt like everybody else was ahead because they were, like financially, just if you really did look at it, like my grandmother paid for my education. So my direct parents were not in the same income bracket at that time as my peers. And so it was so interesting to kind of grow up in this place where we really did have so much, but because it was so comparative to this, now looking back, very high end, like top 1% of income people, it would always feel like there was that scarcity. Now putting my money story together with my husband, who came from an environment in which they didn't have a lot, and that was the reality. And yet they felt like they had so much because of their perspective of gratitude and less comparison and a we'll fix it ourselves mentality. In 2021, my husband, who's a chiropractor, found out he had a tumor in his spine. So we went through the journey of surgery and recovery, shutting down the chiropractic clinic for that time, and much of our savings going to the medical expenses. He's fine now, and we're on the other side. But the jolt of kind of being partway through life and like doing the right things, being wise, and yet still then feeling behind in a way, re-triggered some of that prior sense of scarcity, even though we were doing the right things. I share this story to say, like, in these different moments, I've had to really hold my story with finances at arm's length to say, it is a tool. It is not our identity. It is not that we, again, kind of did things right or wrong. But I'm wondering, in stories like that, how do you help people separate and go forward from the real life stuff that happens that's not maybe even in their control?
That's a lot. That's a lot to go through. I find the fastest way to get back into a healthy space is to start rebuilding ASAP. Because there's something about having that money build up, seeing the savings, the emergency fund build back up, that does the trick.
Right.
One of my favorite, tricks, I'll call it, to getting savvy with your money is automation. Just simply automating your financial life so that the money is building up without you having to think about it. The power doesn't come from the income. It comes from the system. Because again, people with $60,000 incomes in the right system can be better off than, I like to talk about a couple that I worked with like 8, 9, 10 years ago. They lived in Connecticut, $450,000 between the two of them, but not a penny. They had 2 children and they were in credit card debt. And it was just a hot mess. And they had the income, but they didn't have the system. So it's not about the income.
Okay, let's shift into the systems. Where do you begin with folks within the frameworks and the systems? Will you share some of that?
One of the biggest things that we do in our process is educate people with the absolute basics to get the foundation in place. You need to lay the foundation before you're going to build a house. And so some of those foundational things are things like streamlining and consolidating their financial life, right? Like we deal with clients in their 30s. That's our sweet spot. These principles work for everybody, 20, 30, 40, 50. It doesn't matter how old you are. But for our 30 somethings, they've usually had a couple jobs and they have old 401ks floating around out there and they don't even remember their password. And just like bringing things into one spot makes it so much easier to manage. So that's like one simple thing is just consolidation. And, the ways to consolidate are straightforward. 401k rolls into a traditional IRA, Roth 401k rolls into a Roth IRA. If you have those, if you don't, you might just have personal retirement accounts. If you're an entrepreneur, you might have a SEP, but knowing your retirement is under one roof, getting your checking and savings accounts. We see people with like so many different accounts. And it's like, you really just need one checking account. Your savings should be moved to an online bank, right? You should be using an online bank for your savings because the difference between an online bank and a brick and mortar bank, for those who don't know, they're both FDIC insured. So it's like the same level of protection on your cash. The thing that's different is obviously online banks don't have the brick and mortar store, like they don't have a bank branch. And so that real estate is really, really expensive for a lot of banks. And so the interest that you get on a savings account at a brick and mortar is much, much less than an online bank. So, right, people will say, how do I make my money work harder for me? The easiest, simplest way to make your money work harder for you is simply get your savings, including your emergency fund, anything that you're not touching for the next year to 2 years, 2 years. Maybe you're saving up a down payment. Maybe you're saving for a wedding. Maybe you're saving for whatever, just anything in the near term. You want to get that money sitting in a high yield savings account at an online bank. So it's like another really like simple thing that we want to see cleaned up. We usually talk about upgrading credit cards. Like, are you still using your starter card back in college? Or are you still using a debit card because you think credit cards are evil? Like a lot of people have that. They don't trust themselves. And I get that. But at the end of the day, if you think, this is me now, I'm getting on my soapbox a little bit, but if you think of a credit card as if it is a debit card that just debits once a month when you pay the bill off in full and on time, you're getting all this protection, all this rewards, building your credit. There's so many benefits. These are some of like the basic things. I'll just quickly talk about the emergency fund because this is something that we think very differently about at Stash Wealth. So for most people, you don't want to stash away 6 to 12 months in cash. That is way too much. And a lot of the old school financial gurus, a lot of the old school talking heads really preach the 6 to 12 months. That is way too much money sitting in cash. To save that kind of money, it's such a hurdle for a lot of people. And so for us, it's 3 months, 3 months of your fixed expenses, not even like of your total expenses. We think of your emergency fund as your first line of defense, not your only line of defense. And if you can just see it as your first line of defense, then you're like, okay, that's not all I have.
It's part of the picture.
It's part of the picture. I do need some liquid, some, life's curveballs, whatever. If you have a job that would take like a really obscure type of role that would take a long time to replace if something were to happen to you, maybe your emergency fund could be a little bit bigger, but like 3 months is like sort of the sweet spot for most people. Once you start tapping your first line of defense, you can then go start figuring out how to tap your second line of defense, which is usually your investments. But we want to get people investing because savings is great. Saving is great for your money. That's your emergency fund. 3 things: your emergency fund, money that you're going to use throughout the year. So for example, if you're saving up for travel, you're going to keep that in a high yield savings account. And then for anything that you're going to be using in the next 2 years, like I was saying, like if you're saving up for a down payment because you want to buy a house in a couple of years, or your wedding is next year, you keep that money in a high yield savings account. I also advocate for a high yield savings account for holiday gifts or just gifts in general. Saving is for, like I said, the emergency fund, anything happening throughout the year or anything happening in the next 2-ish years. Beyond that, your money needs to be growing. Right. And compounding. And the only way to do that is by getting it into the market.
I hear often that you can't save your way to wealth. And that's what I think I'm hearing here too. Like being aware of, like, when you're talking about the difference between saving and investing, like getting it over to, like, if I drew a T chart and I have, here's Professor Tracy, saving on the left and like investing on the right, I want to get over to investing as soon as possible.
Literally, we have that visual and we show it to
great.
clients. We call it the money map. And it's like your income goes into your, it automates into your 401k or some employer retirement plan if you have it. Then it dumps into your checking account. And then from there, you automate to savings, automate to investing. And then what's left is your lifestyle. Because a lot of people struggle with that. Like, what lifestyle can I afford? How do I upgrade my lifestyle without falling into lifestyle creep?
When you just gave the example of the couple that was earning over 400K and yet they had zero saved or whatnot, is that what you see happens to folks? Is that as they went up, because they probably didn't start at that amount, but as they kept going up, more kept going out to, I know people say to keep up with the Joneses. Is it something else that you see, or is it that?
It's that. It's not having the system in place. And I adamantly do not believe in budgeting. The framework around budgeting is so messed up. It is designed to fail.
Ooh, say more.
The concept of budgeting is essentially put ceilings on all of the areas of our life that we need to budget for: groceries, gas, dining out, whatever. And you do that in hopes of having money left over at the end of the month, right? So that you can save it. That never happens because there's no such thing as a typical month. And so inevitably you go over a little bit on dining out, maybe because friends came in from out of town, like just something harmless like that. And then you're like, oh crap, we spend too much on dining out. And you start negotiating with yourself. Okay, we'll spend a little less here. So the whole framework around budgeting is guilt inducing and you're negotiating with yourself. And most people don't stick to it for that long.
And no wonder then people don't want to talk about money, because it feels like now we're adding shame and guilt and into it.
Exactly.
And so the alternative, let me see if I can get this. So the alternative to that methodology is if you automate and you have clarity from the front end of where everything's going, then whatever is left in there, like if I'm automating to investing, if I'm automating to like my mortgage and all those things, then whatever's left then, like I can spend.
You nailed it. Personal finance is not hard. Like, I have a lot of beef with Wall Street and the financial services industry, which is where I came from, but they've just made money seem so complex and so difficult. And the basics of personal finance are actually very logical and straightforward. And when what we say is you can blow whatever's left is yours to blow guilt-free. And people will always say to me, first of all, I'll just say it's a concept that I've coined called responsibly reckless.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Exactly. Because we all want to enjoy our money. We work so freaking hard and we want to just feel like we can go spend it. And so if what's just left in your checking account is yours to blow, all of it down to zero every month. So the pushback that I get before people do the exercise is there's not going to be anything left over. What are you talking about? There's not enough left over. Promise. I literally, without fail, do the exercise. Decide what your short-term priorities are. Decide what long-term priorities are. Design your life. If it's your life, right? If you don't plan for it, like, who will?
I love it. Okay, let's say that you have someone that's in this place, like somebody that is maybe their income is not the problem and they are on track with a lot of their savings and investment. And let's say they have too much cash that you're talking about that they are holding on to from some of maybe that scarcity. Where do you start with somebody like that in helping them recognize like maybe they're living more frugally than they need to?
Everything that we do at Stash Wealth starts with your goals. So with someone who is sitting on a ton of cash, and we had a client the other day sitting on $180,000 in her checking account. I find that as soon as you start painting a picture, helping them paint a picture and start articulating things that they care about, they're a little bit more willing to if you can show them how their money can work for them towards the thing that they care about.
I want to talk about another potential listener. Let's say this person is that person that is overloaded by credit card debt and is so stressed to get started that they have put it to the side because it seems just so overwhelming to dig in. Like we talked about somebody that has too much cash what about the other side that again, maybe the income isn't the problem, but it's more these systems. But is there anything else you'd say to that person that is scared to look at the bank account, at the credit card statement, but is earning income?
Yeah, I don't know how extreme you're envisioning this person, but I will say that our sweet spot is not the extreme hot money mess, as I call them. Mm-hmm. If someone's truly a hot money mess, like just can't get out of their own way and has found themselves in a ton of credit card debt due to other impulses, or like just there's like a disconnect between reality and what they believe is possible, is therapy. I'm not afraid to say it. Like, I think that that's a very valid time to go work with a professional.
Totally. I mean, it makes so much sense with what we've been talking about because it's intertwined in your life story and how you get to certain places and why it's challenging to either spend or to not spend.
And I was going to say, it's not that we don't work with clients who have credit card debt, but I think if I'm imagining the extreme version that you're talking about, it's like, it's an awareness piece. If you're aware and you're ready to accept what is in front of you and make changes, usually we don't have to do that by habits. Again, the systems, but you're going to stick to the systems, then it's different. But if that's not you, then there's no shame in getting some help.
Priya, I'm curious, we have a sentence stem that we use that's if only people knew. And so when it comes to moving forward in their financial awareness and these systems, what would you say if only people knew?
If only people knew that there was no such thing as I'm good at money, I'm bad at money. That's not a thing. How much time have you spent trying to learn it? Usually the people who say, I'm bad with money. And then you're like, well, what do you know? Or what have you learned? Or what tools have you, like, what have you read? Where do you go for what are your resources? It's like, oh, I know I'm bad with money. It's like the conditioning is where they stop.
What does it mean to be rich?
It's different for everyone, right? Like rich can be something very simple. Rich can be something very extravagant. It can be tied to money, the definition, or it might not be. It might be your own piece that you use the word rich to define. So I would never try to define it for someone in a very absolute way.
I'm thinking back to Design Your Life, right? Like in order to make the decision for how much do I want to be saving for radical generosity? How much do I want to be saving for college? How much then I need, like, it's connected to my values. It's connected to what rich means to me.
Totally. And Ramit Sethi, who is a really, really awesome financial influencer and educator, he talks about the rich life, your rich life, and helping people define that. And I love his work on it. And definitely, he has a great book as well. I Will Teach You to Be Rich is actually the book. I recommend it. It's a good starter book. It's actually a great starter book.
Okay, Priya, tell us about your podcast and where folks can find you. And
Yeah, I have a weekly podcast called The F Word, F for finance. And
this is a clean podcast, Priya.
It's a weekly podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday, and all the tips to master your money, specifically in your 30s, but everyone, they can apply. So I'm on Instagram. It's Priya Malani. Those are sort of the two channels. I mean, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're basically everywhere. But I personally do maintain and actively use my Instagram. So
wonderful. Priya, I want to thank you just so much for your insights, for this conversation, for letting me go into different stories and really unpack your approach at Stash Wealth. It's so powerful to hear, like, pushing against the mindsets that keep us stuck, pushing against some of the entrenched practices. And I know I'm going to continue to think about the things that you shared and follow your work, and just so glad to be connected. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Tracy.
All right. And if you enjoyed this episode, we would so appreciate if you would leave us a rating and review, because that is how more folks find our podcast. So thanks for listening to the Building Thinkers podcast, and we'll see you next time.